to Canucks After Dark. Here are your hosts, Parker Hallowell and Clay Emo.
Good evening, Vancouver and everyone listening around the world. Welcome back to Canucks After Dark, your number one source for Monday night Canucks talk on YouTube and, of course, in podcast form. My name is Parker. You know me as ParkersPucks. And, folks, the offseason is in full swing. We've got lots of stuff to talk about tonight. But before we get to that, of course, I need to introduce my co-host, who's right there on that side of the screen, the one and only Canuck Clay Emo.
How are you, Parker?
I am excellent. It's a lovely Monday night. Weather's good.
Yeah.
I've got no lighting, so I have a pretend fireplace to light my face up, and it is a lovely night here in Vancouver.
Oh, it looks sharp. It looks sharp. I think I actually think I forgot to mention last Monday that the day before my son Jacob, my second guy, graduated from high school. So it just goes to prove once again that you are closer to my kid's age than you are my age. So I'm not sure what to make of that.
Well, that's okay, I'm sure. Congratulations, Jacob, by the way.
Thank you. So,
of course, we've got a lot of stuff to go over tonight. We're going to go over the big news of the week, Canucks-wise, which was really just the coaching staff, some AHL news, some Pettersson news, some Hughes news. Around the NHL, a lot of stuff happened too, especially today. So we've got a lot of fun stuff tonight. Before we do that, of course, quick shout out to everyone watching here. Of course, we try to be as live and feedbacky as possible here on YouTube. So all your comments as they come through, we see them, we'll read them throughout. If any of you bring up some fun topics later on in the show, we'll read those. But without further ado, where do you want to dive into first tonight?
well, I think we've had a nice little, I guess, pattern or way of doing it where we do Canuck stuff first, see how far that takes us, despite them not. Well, I guess there's 27 teams not playing right now, but we go Canucks part stuff first. Get us to the first half. Don't do that, and then we can start to pull up the non-Canucks topics as we go.
Perfect. And I think we have a lot of Canucks stuff to talk about. Do you want to start with the players or the coaches?
Let's go players first, and then because we got like 8 coaches to go through. So
yeah, for sure. All right. So the two big players for the Canucks, the two real franchise cornerstones at this point: number one center, number one defenseman, Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes. Why don't you give everyone the latest here?
Sure. No, thank you, Parker. So here's the latest. We know that these guys need new contracts. They are both. They're expiring RFA, their first entry-level contracts. So they're what we call restricted free agents. We have exclusive negotiating rights. Quick caveat. A team can offer sheet Elias Pettersson. We're not worried about that because the Canucks will likely match. So we don't have to get into the nuances of that. What's important for all of us to talk about now is that whatever Hughes makes, whatever Pettersson makes, those are the priorities because that's going to basically tell us how much money we have left to sign maybe another D-man or two, another bottom 6 forward or two. And it'll basically help set whether it's $5 million, $6 million, $8 million in motion. Now, why it's important today, Parker, is Elliot Friedman's talking about it, is Rick Dhaliwal's talking about it. And I even heard Chris Gear, the assistant general manager, who I really like. I don't know about you. I really like him. And I think people who don't like Benning, they can take solace in knowing that there's a smart guy in Chris Gear alongside Benning. He said all the right things. He even said a small nuance like this. It's important that we sign Petey before Hughes and not the other way around, because if they sign Hughes first, it might give a team a signal that, they're going to be in trouble to sign Pettersson. Then let's go offer sheet Pettersson. So even a small nuance like that was fascinating to me. So bottom line, Pettersson needs a new contract. They're talking bridge deal. And we've talked about this before many times, maybe a Matt Barzell 3x7. Quinn Hughes, potentially a longer term deal, i.e. he can make more money, and then you're trying to buy into some of his UFA years already. So that's the nuance, the difference. PD likely short-term bridge, 3 years. Hughes, as long as it's not 4 years, that's the dumbest contract ever. You want to go 6, 7, or 8 for Hughes if you are going long-term.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think we'll talk a little bit more about that Chris Gear interview later on. Lots of good little nuggets in that one. And so we heard from Elliot Friedman today that Pettersson likely going to be around 3 years. So, of course, that first brings everyone's minds to Matt Barzell, right? Barzell signed 3x7 for the Islanders, which is a tight little piece of business for the Islanders. And you got to think, I've seen people on both sides saying, well, Pettersson should get more than Barzell because he's a better player. And it's like, yeah, well, I mean, he was kind of out for most of this season. It's not a huge sample size to go off of. And yeah, he's a really good player. But at the end of the day, you go off of what he's shown you, and you haven't seen, at least this last year, you didn't see a ton. So this might be the right scenario on both sides, right? For the Canucks, it's, well, let's make sure that he is going to be a top 10 center in the NHL, right? Let's make sure before we commit to 8 years at $9 million, let's hedge the bets a little bit. Let's wait 3 years. And if you're Elias Pettersson, you're saying, yeah, well, right now I could sign an 8-year deal and get decent money. Or 3 years down the line, that salary cap's going to go up. Once the flat cap's mostly over, once those US TV deals are in full swing, we might see the cap go up a few $1 million, and Pettersson can then go, okay, now I'm going to cash in and say, 8 years. Who knows? At that point, it might be $12-13 million for a guy like Pettersson, especially if that salary cap keeps going up. So it kind of makes a lot of sense on both sides to me.
Yeah, as usual, Parker, you make a great point. A bridge deal for Petey makes sense from both the team's perspective and especially from Pettersson. Very similar to Brock Besser. Remember, he came off an injury in his third year, signs a 3-year deal, almost a show-me deal, and now he's guaranteed at least $7.5 million a year for his next contract as the last year of his 3-year deal. So I agree with you. Petey makes sense. He can prove himself a little bit more. We know he's good, but he didn't have a good season last year, not entirely his fault. So yes, he can easily build up his value. So if that's the case, Parker, if we agree that Petey should be a 3-year bridge deal, what's in it for Quinn to go with a long-term deal in your eyes?
Sure. Yeah. And I only saw the one tweet that said that it won't be the same term as Pettersson. Was that confirmed that it's going to be long, or could it also go on the shorter end?
No, I think both, great question. Both Elliot Friedman and even Chris Geary hinted that it would be on the longer side as opposed to the shorter side. Okay,
so I kind of see this as the Canucks just sort of putting their money down on, like, sort of, placing a bet on Quinn Hughes, who had kind of a down year this year, right? Now, if you look at Quinn Hughes last year and you think, yep, this is the player he's going to be at the minimum, and he's only going to get better from there, and you look at this last year as just an outlier, well, you can then take this last year as part of the contract negotiations, and then you can say, all right, we're going to put 6-7 years on the table here at maybe a slightly reduced number, right? We're gonna make a gamble here that if it pays off, if we're only paying Quinn Hughes, $6-7 million in 6 years from now, when he's like 25 years old, or maybe even 4 or 5 years from now, like 25 years old, and potentially one of the best defensemen in the NHL, maybe a top 10 defenseman, well, then it's a steal, right? Then at that point, you're really expanding your window. And I think one of the things that I've tried to preach a lot is going all in for one run doesn't really work, because even the best teams in the NHL, you look at Colorado, who might have been the best team in the NHL this year, you have to beat 4 teams. It just takes one of them. You need one bad set. You need your goalie to have one bad stretch of games, and it falls apart. But if you can, stretch that window out. I mean, we saw that with the Washington Capitals, right? They didn't win in their window. Yeah. They won like 2 years after it because they kept making smart decisions. So if you can do all of the work to just give yourself the best opportunity to win, not once, but over a 5-6 year span, then that's really the right way to do it.
Right. And good points. And even if Quinn Hughes does sign 7 years now, that's the same as PD doing 3 and then 4. So I don't think people should freak out if it's a long-term contract, for all the reasons that you mentioned. Is we could potentially, depending on the way things go and the way Hughes goes, it could be a steal 4, 5, 6 years into this deal for sure. And the other thing, and we talked about this before, Parker, you know how we always talked about a big four of Hughes and Makar and Dahlin and Heiskanen. They're all going to get matching contracts because they're all so good and they're all going to build up their bargaining power. It might be a little more divergent or diverse than we thought, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Makar, especially in this last playoff series where I actually watched a lot of him, and it's like he's on another tier. And there's a reason that the Canucks supposedly had Makar, Pettersson 1-2 in that draft. back in
Wow.
2017, right? Like that was their rumor is if Makar was available at 5, they would have taken him over Pettersson. And I don't think you could have faulted them at this point, right? You would have had either a 1D or a 1C. Both are very essential, right? So, Makar is going to get just so paid. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, we saw it with the Horvat contract, right? We saw him get, the Canucks said, well, look, this guy's going to be our captain in a couple of years. He is going to be, either our 1 or 2C. Let's lock him up for 6 years at, what was it? $5.5 million. Well, I mean, you look at that now, and in theory, if the Canucks had really optimized their window to be, let's make a run while Horvat's making 5.5, Pettersson's making $1 million, Hughes is making $1 million, that would have been a pretty good everything coming together while everyone's on a cheap deal. Thatcher Demko making $1 million as well. But of course, things don't always work out the way we want them to. So we'll have Horvat, eventually getting a new deal. But it was one of those deals that, worked out. $5.5 million. He's worth probably more than that right now as, a team captain and a guy who would probably be a mid to low end 1C or a very high end 2C in the NHL.
That is such a strong point, Parker, about being competitive, being in your window on cheap contracts. Because the way you laid it out, imagine if it was this season, you're right, where Hughes, Pettersson on their cheap ELCs, you have Brock in his second deal, Horvat. But you're right, if the competitive window is indeed 2 or 3 years from now, as we've heard, that's Brock's new deal, that's Horvat's new deal, that's Miller if you want him back, and that's Pettersson and Hughes' new deal, and Demko. So now you have your 6 basically cornerstones all on their second or third deals, as opposed to the first or second deals. And that means less money to go and supplement the rest of the team with. So, we're not complaining. You can't do anything about it now. And at least it sounds like they have a plan. They know that this next year with Roussel, Beagle, Eriksson, and Holtby and recapture penalty all still on the books. We know that this year's kind of a, Sting, treading water year. And next summer is when we have some flexibility for sure.
Absolutely. And I mean, we talk about, everything is sort of about value in a salary cap league, right? You can have the best players, but if they're making more money than their value, then they're a negative asset to the team, right? So, I mean, if the Canucks had, let's say, Brock Besser making under 6 right now, Horvat making 5.5, JT Miller making 5.25. I mean, the list goes on. Pettersson, of course, Hughes making, entry-level deals, Demko making $1 million this year. And you take away, let's say Edler making $6 million, Myers making $6 million, Beagle, Roussel each making 3, Sutter making 4.5, right?
Don't forget Louis.
Louis, the Luongo cap recapture, right? Let's say the Canucks had optimized everything in a way where they had those core guys on those cheap deals, and they had $25 to $30 million of salary cap going into free agency last year. You think this team wouldn't be a contender? Like that, another 30 million, right? It's literally 40% of your cap. So it's all about optimizing around contracts. And if the Canucks, I mean, it's too late for the entry level deals. We will have Podkolzin coming in an entry level deal for 3 years. You have Höglander an entry level deal for the next 2 years. Not as top tier players per se, but definitely good pieces that are going to have value. If you can set yourself up for the future and set yourself up for a window where you're going to have some players, maybe you're taking a gamble, but you're going to have these good value contracts, 3-4 years down the line when the Canucks should be hopefully in the heart of their contending window, then, that's just setting yourself up for success.
Man, I don't know what makes me more sad. The fact that you laid out the missed opportunity we had this year with $30 million tied up in kind of superfluous players, or the fact that tomorrow is the 10-year anniversary of Game 7. I thought that was really sad, but you just made me even more sad. Thank you. I appreciate you, brother.
It's all sadness in Canucks land. That's all we're here for.
So no, I think that was a pretty good breakdown. So hopefully in the chat that helped everyone that's here about what they're looking at for both PD and Hughes. Should we talk about some of the coaches now? And do you want to walk us through this one?
Sure. Yeah. Lots of big news around the Canucks front. Or on the coaches front. Let's start, I guess, with the smallest category, which is not returning. And that's Newell Brown, the power play coach for the Canucks. And he's had a lot of backlash in social media the last few years around the power play of the Canucks with, the drop pass that isn't executed very well. And just sort of the static power play setup for the Canucks. So Newell Brown let go. So that's one change. Extended wise, Nolan Baumgartner will stay on as the as one of the assistant coaches. Jason King staying on. Ian Clark getting a promotion in name only to director of goaltending operations, but he said in his interview with Halford and Bruff that he was already doing all this stuff anyways. So he is sticking around. Daryl Seward staying around as the video coach, which is sort of more behind the scenes. And then two more people brought on, hired Bradshaw as an assistant coach and Kyle Gustafson as a special assignment coach. Let's start at the top 10. Newell Brown, what are your thoughts on them not bringing him back?
Let's not forget that we were the fourth best power play in the league just 2 years ago under Newell Brown. And maybe that was because Pettersson was our new shiny toy, and Hughes Hughes just came in at the end of that was his first full season. So I can see why, the power play was good just 2 short seasons ago. But yes, it did falter a little bit. It's funny you mentioned the drop pass. Parker, you know this. Every team uses the drop pass now. They just probably use it a little better than we do sometimes. Yeah. Like they actually give it to a guy who has speed coming on. Not that our guys are slow, but we've talked about this before. I think the power play, when you have that personnel, that should be good enough to be way better than it was. Just too static, too predictable, not enough movement, and therefore easier to defend. So from all accounts, he was a really good person, a great coach. Guys liked him, and Travis Green knows that he's going to get another job, but I have no problem with changing things up. I know you and I talked about maybe surprised that it was maybe Brown and not Baumgartner that took the axe, but in this case, it was indeed Newell Brown.
Yeah, and we mentioned sort of, the personnel the Canucks have, and this, most teams in the NHL have good power plays, right? Like they have good players on their power play. And you could look at the Canucks group and say, well, maybe they're not top tier, but they're one of the maybe one of the better ones, or even middle of the pack. This last year, though, 25th in the NHL on power play percentage was 17.4, and that's in the North Division, which was notoriously leaky on defense, I think it's fair to say. The Edmonton Oilers had the number 1 power play in the league with 10% more, like 10% higher, which is actually 30% better on the power play at 27.6%, right? What's the difference? Yeah. Well, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, of course, but also the movement, right? I mean, it's making the most out of that personnel. So I think that's the direction they went. And we're at the point where, if Travis Green thinks that that's the right move, and it's a move that he thinks will improve the power play, I can't argue with it, because I think it needed a shake up at the very least.
Yeah, it's a trickle down effect. If you're not good on your power play, then teams won't be afraid to take penalties against you. They'll rough you up a little bit, and then you're asking questions about team toughness. So how do you make them pay? You make them pay by taking penalties, by scoring on your power play. So let's see what happens. Whether Shaw is known, I know we'll get to him. He's known as a defensive guy, but he's known as a very bright guy. So he's going to help, I think, all areas of our team for sure.
All right, on to the extended category. Nolan Baumgartner, defensive coach. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, a tiny bit surprised, but do you blame our defense on our systems, on our personnel? Maybe a combination of both. I do know that the club thinks he's a very bright mind. He played in the system. So I didn't think both Brown and Baumgartner would be gone. So the fact that if Brown was the one that was going to go, I guess it makes sense. And I think, we've talked about this. Schmidt got better. Hamonic got better as the year went on. So maybe we can chalk it up to just a crazy year last year. I don't know. I don't mind him, but I'm not his biggest fan. How about you?
I'm more honestly, at this point, I don't know a lot about I don't know what a defense coach does day to day, right? I don't know the impact he has, right? We can look at it and say, yeah, the Canucks defense wasn't great this year. And then we can also look at the players and say, okay, well, on paper, the Canucks defense also wasn't great this year, right? So at that point, is it the personnel? Is it the coach? It's hard to tell. So again, It's one of those ones where I don't know. I thought the defense wasn't great. But that doesn't necessarily mean the coach was the problem.
Sure. Agreed.
All right. Next on our list is Jason King, former Vancouver Canuck, played something like 55 games for the Canucks back in the day. A staple on the Manitoba Moose. Sticking around with the Vancouver Canucks still as an assistant coach. I guess just brought on this year. He was in the Utica system for a few years, coached in Utica for I think 4 years. Got promoted up to the Canucks squad this last year, and he's sticking around.
Yeah, and he actually, in essence, takes Noel Brown's position as the power play and offense forwards coach behind the bench. So he will join Travis Green on the bench. And did you know, Parker, I know this was right when you're a lot younger than I am. So I don't know if you remember, he was actually on a line with the Sedins, and they called themselves the mattress line because you have 2 twins. And a king. So yeah, there you go. Yeah. So
I do.
You do remember?
That was right at the beginning of my Canucks watching was around then.
So then you'll also remember.
Yeah.
Right. You'll also remember he's not the most skilled player ever. So on one hand, do you want Jason King running your power play? Former pro, maybe he's a really good coach. So I'm okay with it. He was okay. He was just okay. So I'm kind of indifferent. I don't mind it. Maybe a new fresh eyes, fresh philosophy might do the team well.
Right. But you don't have to have been a great player to be a good coach, right? I mean, we see a ton of coaches that weren't pro players at all.
Yeah.
And for a guy to have been drafted, 7th round back in 2001, to have come out to actually have played, albeit only 59 NHL games. You probably think it's probably not a skill thing. That's the reason he made it. It's probably an IQ thing, right? It's probably he thought the game really well, even if he didn't have the skill to back it up. And that's more important as a coach than a guy with good hands. So,
well said. Good point.
I think, if he is shown, clearly, look, the guy is still only 39. Right, like he's literally still at an age to be playing in the NHL still. Had he been a better player, he's already gone. He's put in 7 years as an assistant coach already. That's clearly guy's dedicated and he wants to learn. And if he's got the brains, then that's good enough for me.
Sounds like what's that song? I've got the brains, you've got the. Anyways, yeah, let's make lots of money. I'm not sure if he's gonna be making lots of money, but yes. Good point. Okay, and then I don't think we don't have to talk too much about Daryl Seward. I guess we trust that he's doing a good job as a video coach. I don't know.
I guess so. They haven't called me yet, so I guess he's doing fine.
They should, man. Have they seen your breakdown videos?
Apparently
they should. Well, hey, quick aside, is that I don't want to put you on the spot here. Is that something you are either aspiring for, or just would you entertain if a team like the Canucks came after you?
I would totally entertain that. It would be a chance at a Stanley Cup ring. So like that's I wouldn't care about the pay. I'd be gone in a heartbeat if any team, because it'd be if I could have a Stanley Cup ring from not being a good hockey player, that'd be sweet.
Well, let's see. Let's have a little competition, and I think you're going to win. Let's see who gets hired first. You as a video analyst, or me as an organ player. We'll see who gets into a hockey team first.
We've got a long ways to go, I think, but we can dream.
All right.
And of course, the big one, the big extension, Ian Clark, and this one was a little controversial. We didn't know if it was going to happen. We had rumors that, the deadline got missed and it looked like he would be gone, most likely based on what happened in Columbus. The Canucks, got Travis Green done. Chris Gear sort of mentioned that hierarchy that they had to drill down in, which I kind of disagree with. I think you can have, I think you can multitask to go back to the sort of the running theme of the management group. But they were able to keep him, and a guy who is regarded around the NHL as one of the best, if not the best. It seemed like a no-brainer to get it done, and it did.
Yeah, what was cool is I remember watching, obviously I know what I talked about. I watched your video about this too when it happened, is you did a really good job of breaking down exactly the timing. And you said that if you're that good, you don't really have to wait for this hierarchy and this timeline. And you did a really good job talking about his history of kind of being a shrewd negotiator in his previous deals. I kind of went more along the fact of this 5 years matches Thatcher Demko's 5 years. And that's saying something, right? When Benning's only getting 2 left, when Travis Green's only getting 2, and your goaltending coach is getting 5, that says a lot about it. The other thing I was going to say really quickly is it was cool. I was on my cousin Dusty's podcast, and he was explaining to me how more teams are starting to go to this director of goaltending approach. And look what happens 1 week later, not because of that, but yes, you're right. He gets a promotion in title, even though he was doing that work already. Can you imagine if that was a stumbling point, Parker? Imagine if we had to wait all this time because he wanted that title. I know that's not the actual reason, but still.
Yeah, and I mean, to sort of go back on the contract itself and how, the whole head coach thing. I mean, if you're scared to hire this guy because you're not sure if your head coach is going to come back, right? So let's say Travis Green doesn't re-sign, you go out and get a new head coach, and your main worry on not re-signing your goaltending coach would be, well, maybe the new head coach doesn't want him and he wants his own goaltending coach. But when we're talking about a guy who's regarded around the league as the best, or one of the best, who the starting goaltender of the team has come out and basically begged management to re-sign the guy. And even the backup goalie has had great things to say about him, even though he's changed a lot of things about his game. And from what we've heard, can be very demanding. That should be enough, right? You think it's like going out and being like, well, I don't know if we should bring back Connor McDavid next year because we're gonna have a different head coach. And what if he doesn't want Connor McDavid on the team, right?
Yeah.
Like it's crazy to me. And yes, a goaltending coach isn't gonna have the same impact as Connor McDavid is, but at the end of the day, if he's the best, he's the best. So whoever's above him on the hierarchy would love to have him as part of the team, especially if he's gonna make your goaltending better. Going back, and of course the whole 5-year thing, it just makes a lot of sense to me. It sort of falls in with what I just said. It makes more sense to have him as sort of a separate entity than the rest of the coaching staff.
Absolutely. And I've not even joked around about my cousin Dusty looking for, being with the Kings, with the Jets, looking for a new team. So I guess it won't be the Canucks. So maybe Dusty goes down the I-5 to Seattle, but we'll worry about that when it happens.
All right, let's go on to the new hires. Let's start off with the lower key one, Kyle Gustafson. Do you know anything about him? An
Nothing. I just know
/ special assignment coach.
Yeah, and it's so bad, man. Like in my vlogs, I press record, one take wonder, right? So I say, and I would never remember what his title was. So I was saying stuff like special skills, special needs, which doesn't make sense at all. Special, who knows, but special assignments. That's good to know. So he's not technically the skills coach, although Chris Higgins is no longer a skills coach. He's back to player development. So who knows what Kyle Gustafson is going to do? I do know he worked with Travis Green back in Portland in the HL days, so there's obviously a relationship there. And apparently, he's going to be kind of like an eye in the sky press box type of coach, and not behind the bench. You can only have so many guys behind the bench.
Yeah, it's good to have, right? Just more eyes, more people bringing in ideas, and of course, the biggest one is Brad Shaw, who was assistant and associate coach of the St. Louis Blues from 2006 to 2016. Was coached for the Islanders, for the Lightning, and as you said, sort of a defense guy, but he might have a little bit more responsibility than that coming here.
Absolutely. Did you hear his interview with, I think it was on Sportsnet 650? I was so impressed, man.
I think I missed that one. I think I only heard the Clark one.
Okay, so he went for a good 18 to 20 minutes, and he was even breaking down like Quinn Hughes' game, saying, this is how he can do. He can do this better when he's on one-on-one battles. He can go after the puck when it's exposed off the offensive players. Like, he was saying a lot of really, really cool things, and it just showed. And he also talks a lot. Maybe that's why I like him. But he showed to me that he's very thoughtful. He's a great communicator, and I think this is low-key going to be an amazing pickup for the team.
Yeah, and it has been the issue with the Canucks is the defensive side, right? They have all the firepower, right? I mean, not all of it. They could use more, of course. But the two-way game has been an issue. So if Brad Shaw is, going to be this defensive, not necessarily defense guru, but defensive guru, to sort of help even the offensive side get involved in defense, and I mean, it takes a lot of strain off of your goaltending, right? If you can have, a better defensive structure, and preventing more goals is always going to help you win more games. So that's I mean, I don't have a ton else to say. He's a guy who seems really smart, and I mean, more smart people behind the bench again can't be a bad thing.
Absolutely. And to wrap this up, I think one thing that we should note about Shaw is he worked with Pietrangelo in St. Louis before obviously he got traded. He worked with Rowinski and Seth Jones in Columbus. So he's worked with some really good top tier, top pairing defensemen. So that would seem to bode well for his work with Quinn Hughes. So I'm hopeful.
Absolutely. Me too.
Wow, we flew through that.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, we kind of had to. There's 6 of them, so it is a lot to get through. Of course, that was last Wednesday. We both put out videos on those, so if you want more in-depth talk on that, of course, you can go to any of our YouTube channels. They're all linked down below, and you can see them below our faces here if you're watching on the video version. And if you're listening to the podcast version and you're on Apple especially, leave a 5-star review, and we'll read it out on the next show. Where do you want to go next? There's two last bits of Canucks things.
Okay.
First one is going to be very quick. The AHL team, the Abbotsford AHL team, apparently are going to have a short list of names announced tomorrow. So that's going to be some fun conversation. Again, I'm sure we'll each have a video on that tomorrow. So with our favorites,
might. I'm not sure if I will, but
I'm gonna do a power ranking of all of them. That's gonna be exciting. So whether that's the Aces or the Pilots or the Farmers or whatever it is, we'll know more about that tomorrow.
If they are called the Abbotsford Farmers, I will buy you dinner at the Keg.
Wow, that's not gonna happen. What's your odds-on favorite going into that list?
Do we like alliteration? So Abbotsford, whatever, airplanes, arrows, alligators, apples. No, I don't know. Abbotsford Millionaires, Abbotsford Fraser Valley Millionaires, Abbotsford Flat. I don't know.
There's
Abbotsford heading east.
They got a mountain in Abbotsford.
Sorry.
I'm
totally showing my city like Richmond bias here.
Yeah, you stay.
Well, what do you think? I have no
clue,
obviously. What do you think?
I'm leaning Aces. I think that's had the most sort of support on the social media side, and it does seem, if they're gonna go that whole airplane theme, which I mean that's sort of the only real thing in Abbotsford. Castle Fun Park's another big attraction there, and the Agri Fair.
Abbotsford mini golfers, yes,
the batting cages,
yeah, very good.
But no, I like the Aces. I've liked lots of the mock-ups we've seen. Again, I'm sure they stick with the blue and green style as well. Other than that, the other only semi-interesting Canucks news, Lucas Yasik likely is not going to get qualified and is just going to become a UFA.
Now, when did we draft this guy?
I want to say 2018. I think it takes 3 years until you have to be signed, right? It was 2015. Whoa, I'm way off here.
Whoa, why do you even know that?
I thought it was a lot more recent. He played in Utica for 4 years, apparently.
Okay.
So
what's his stat line?
So 2018-19, 29 points in 63 games. It's fine as a first year. Next year, 27 points in 56 games in the shortened season. And then this season, he played in the Czechs League, put up 12 points in 19 games. Then he came to Utica and put up 23 in 28. Only four goals among that, though. But at this point, the guy's 23. And, he was a 6th-round pick in 2015. I guess he just sort of made the decision that he'd rather play in Europe than in Vancouver here.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of angst on Twitter. And it's funny, Parker, when you mentioned 2015, now I do remember, but I also remember that, he hasn't done much. So I don't know, no harm, no foul to me. It doesn't seem like a big loss when you have guys like Podkolzin and Hoglander that you want to give spots to, and others you might say that have a better chance of having an impact on this team.
Yeah, and I mean, basically he was on his ELC when he played in Utica. Ran out, so he's an RFA. And it's at the point where if you don't think he's going to play for you now, it was kind of weird to me because, putting bodies in Abbotsford is something you're going to have to do. True. He seemed like a pretty good, put him in Abbotsford, and that would probably be a good guy who could develop into maybe a 4th liner at best. But again, you can find a million of those guys, right? If you're looking for a cheap 4th liner, You don't have to go out and spend $3 million on one for 4 years. You can go out and you can find a cheap one to fill those slots. So I don't, again, everyone's like, like you're losing a guy for nothing. And it's like, yeah, but you could also get one of these guys for nothing as well.
Right. So I would say signing a 2015 6th-round draft pick just for the sake of not losing him, don't do that.
And that's what the Canucks thought as well.
There you go.
All right, let's take a quick note here for all of you who are listening and who like to show up every week at 10 p.m. on Monday. Programming note, next week's episode will not be at 10 p.m. It's going to be earlier.
No.
It's going to be at 7:30 Pacific, so it should come
because one of us has an athletic competition to go to. You guys can guess who's who.
So basically, that I think the game ends at around 7:30 on next Monday, whatever the Tampa Bay game, if necessary. So I have a hockey game at 9:30 that night. So if you guys can come stick around at 7:30 instead, and if you miss it, of course, you can watch the recorded version or go subscribe to the podcast version and listen to it later that day. If you want to watch it at 10 p.m., it'll be up at 10 p.m. already done.
That's true.
And even on
you can pretend you're watching it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and on podcast platforms, on Spotify, it'll be up by 10 o'clock on Spotify. So if you're used to it at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m., it'll be there. Don't worry about it. It's just going to be it's going to be Canucks Before Dark next Monday.
That's true. And it's funny, Parker, out of 11 episodes, this will be the first one that we had to move off our time. By fluke, it actually is better for me as well, because then I can take a break, study a bit, and then I was thinking about jumping on for my birthday celebration, but it's kind of a goofy thing that I've done. It's not even a tradition. I started last year. I don't think 1 year counts as a tradition. So yeah, let's do Canucks After Dark, 7:30 to 8:30. And then I might jump on at 11:45 and be with myself as I celebrate my birthday. But that's for another thing. Should we do 3 minutes of Don't Do That?
Sure. Let's do that. Forgetting about Don't Do That. Don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's fine. And Parker, not scoring in your debut on next Monday night. Don't do that.
Okay, that's a little pressure. I don't know. Usually I switch back and forth. I'm better at defense, so I usually play defense. But I like to play forward because scoring's fun.
Of course.
I got one from Lucas that he sent to me saying switching fan bases for the Seattle Kraken. Don't do that. And now I'm not going to mention any names, but there is a podcast on a certain podcast network that I saw is going to be they're the WHL podcast. Basically, they are going to be supporting the Kraken. Don't do that.
Don't do that. And actually, Joshua Gold on my YouTube channel today said the exact same thing as switching allegiance to the Seattle Kraken. That
was Josh Gould. Sorry, Josh. I had Lucas's right below that, and that wasn't even relevant at all. Sending me DMs and expecting me to get them right. Don't do that.
A rare gap. No, that was pretty funny, actually. That was good.
I'm glad you mentioned his name.
Well, he'll be like, hey, that guy had the exact same tweet as me.
Yeah.
Fangirl, not putting Eriksson on the Abbotsford to be named AHL team. Don't do that. That's fair. Well, save $1 million of cap space. Yeah.
Right around there.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
I already knew I wasn't even going to. Justin, not being here next week for Clay's late night birthday stream. Don't do that. When did you say that was? 11:45. You're doing it?
Yeah, it's gonna be so stupid.
Why?
So here's the thing. Really quick. I'll be very quick. Last year, it was on a Sunday night, so I did my regular Sunday night stream, and then I took a bit of a break, and I came down, and then I this is how much of a dork I am.
Why wouldn't you just make the 10 o'clock one the birthday one?
Because then if I want to be there when the clock turns, then it's a 2-hour stream, and I can't handle that. Yeah, so it works out. Monday night, it's perfect. Canucks After Dark with you. Take a break, come down at 11:45, do a small half an hour stream, and we'll see if there's like even 5 people that show up. We can do this, pat myself on the back, and then I'll go to bed and then go from there. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. See, I assumed that like that day was your birthday, and I was like, why are you postponing it so long? But if you want to be there as the clock turns, I mean, you could just do the stream the following day. But I digress. Anyways.
But I do have that in the plan too. But we'll worry about that later. Okay. C edits. Not listening to Brad Shaw when your team wants to be a contender. Don't do that. Exactly. C edits. I'm with you. Brad Shaw is going to be awesome.
Yeah, honestly, anyone who has a brain and a good one, good by me.
And Verno, I think, is throwing shade at me with the next one. Why don't you read it?
Saying, I don't know that guy when talking about Canucks' new coaching staff. Don't do that. Now, I'm going to give you guys a little peek behind the curtain here. Look, we make videos and talk about our favorite team all the time. We don't know everything. Yeah. Are we expected to know off the bat when we see like, oh man, the Canucks got Kyle Gustafson. No disrespect to Kyle if you're watching out there, which I know you aren't. But like, look, we don't know everybody in the NHL coaching industry, especially, you know. So at the end of the day, look, we just do our research, we package it all up into a easy, digestible format for you guys, and we hope you enjoy it.
And last one, Dexter. Tell me you get this one, Parker. Dexter's really funny, but I'm not sure where he's going with this one. Budging in front of Travis Green at the buffet on the road. Don't do that. Is there a story there?
I Googled it and I can't find anything.
Okay. Dexter, explain yourself in the chat, please.
Yeah, I am interested in some more context there.
Having a bottom tier power play, don't do that. Okay, we'll stick that one in.
Get that up. All right.
10 minutes of whatever you want before we go to them.
Let's talk about the rest of the NHL. A lot of stuff to fit in here. Dexter says he doesn't want anyone taking all of Travis Green's food. Okay. Sure. First one, big news from today. Gerard Gallant, free agent head coach, formerly of the Florida Panthers and Vegas Golden Knights. Again, fired from both for kind of unknown reasons. We never really found out why, considering they were performing well. And he seems to be a very good coach. Signed on with the New York Rangers today. So they had a full sort of house cleaning, I want to say about a month ago. They went out, they got a heck of a coach to help try to build up some guys like, you know, Alexis Lafreniere and the rest.
Do you think the World Championship gold medal sealed the deal, or do you think this was in place already?
I would assume it was in place already, and they had to wait for the World Championship to end. It would be a really weird thing to... Now, if they had just lost every game in the World Championship, which they almost did, could that have put some things in jeopardy? Maybe, but I think he had the resume going in, right? Like, his resume sort of spoke for itself. I don't think that was a big part of it, but it couldn't have hurt. I mean, bringing this team basically from the brink of elimination, where they needed some luck to go their way to even make it as far as they did, to go out and win the gold medal over Finland. You know, just another check mark on the resume.
And it's just strange when you think of Gerard Gallant, and more so, this is a comment more on the Vegas Golden Knights. They've been good the 4 seasons they've been in the league, or 3, whatever it is. But they fired him and replaced him with their rivals coach, Peter DeBoer of the San Jose Sharks. That's so weird.
That was so bizarre. And I still don't get it.
Me neither.
Because it's not like the Sharks were good either, really, right? Yeah. Like, it's just that was a bizarre move. And I think the Rangers got a good coach there. Agreed. All right. Let's talk about, I mean, this is our first episode since round 2 finished, right? So we actually have some series to review. Well, the biggest one... Did you do a prediction video? For this round, I did not. I was going to, and I got lazy.
Well, let's just do it right now.
Yeah. So I guess the first, if we look back at the last round, the biggest one was Vegas, Colorado. That was, Colorado goes up in the series. What was it? They were up 2, right? They won the first 2 games. First game 7-1, second game 3-2 in overtime, and then Vegas wins, and they won 4 games in a row, and the Avalanche just sort of ran out of steam. Marc-Andre Fleury put up a wall, as he tends to do, and the favorite, the odds-on favorite from basically every source out there, goes down in 6.
Avalanche should have won game 5, and then now we're talking about a 7-game series, no matter who wins, right? So that's what a huge difference. And maybe I won't put words in your mouth. I know I was probably not even talking smack, but I was not giving Vegas enough credit after that 7-1 victory in game 1. forgetting that Colorado had coming off a week of rest after sweeping, whereas Vegas got 1 day of rest right as they navigated from their first round series. So yeah, we saw it tonight too. Vegas is just as good as Colorado, tied them in points. Colorado maybe has the more sexy players, so to speak, but I do know that I basically lost all my hockey pools because of it.
So that game 1 was on Sunday, May 30th. So 2 weeks ago, we did a show, and we talked about that game. We said, "Wow, Colorado crushes Vegas 7-1."
Yeah.
And we were like, "Can Colorado go on 4 straight sweeps?"
No, you said that, man.
I think I did. Yeah. No, and I got my hopes up a little bit. Look, I was wrong. Vegas went out and they really just shut down Colorado's game. And it's a style that has worked for them for the past few years, and it worked again, and it seems to be working based on the game tonight. But we'll quickly touch on the rest of the series.
Sure.
Bruins Islanders. Oh, that was great. That was good job. And especially with what's happening tomorrow. Let's go Islanders. Woo! Islanders.
Were you truly rooting for them, Parker?
I was, but not like heavily. I don't care that much. But no, I was glad they won. I think Boston would have been better for entertainment value going into the next round. As I think they're just a more exciting team. But the Islanders are they're just this weird group of people who just seem to shut every team down that they go against. I mean, Boston scores, 5 goals in them in game 1, and then they just struggle to score the rest of the series.
I'm giggling because the last 2 episodes, we've both basically said that the Islanders are full of nondescript players, and we're trying to be muted and restrained in our praise for them, but we have to give them full props. And they're a solid Trotz. They're just a solid, hard working team, and probably an underrated defense. We kept ragging about the forwards, but their defense is pretty good.
Yeah,
absolutely. Some good players back there. Yeah,
absolutely. And they are up against the Tampa Bay Lightning, who they made quick work of the Hurricanes. This series ended the day after our last episode on the Tuesday, a 2-0 shutout. Just a 4-1 series win. They just won. Like, I don't really know how else to say it. They just they went out there, they beat them. And it was that
Dougie
simple.
Hamilton whining a little bit.
Yeah, he did. He definitely did whine about it a little bit, saying they're $18 million over the salary cap. But you know what? That's the rules that the teams play by, and you can disagree with it, and I disagree with it, but it's just the way she goes.
Right, and then that leaves Montreal, Winnipeg. Were you surprised?
That series was over when we had our last episode.
Oh, that's right.
We already talked about this one. That game ended a week ago with
all
Montreal
blur.
completing the sweep, and that brings us to round 3. Let's talk about these matchups here. Let's start with the one that had a game tonight, and that was Vegas Montreal. Vegas looks good. And I think. And we've underestimated Montreal at every corner, right? And I think, that Toronto series, it was okay. Like, Toronto's the better team. And I still think they are a better team. They just weren't in that first round. Carey Price stood on his head, was an absolute madman. And then I didn't expect them to sweep the Jets. I thought they might win in 7. Like, I thought it would be like a 6 or 7 game series that could go either way. Montreal just went out and crushed them, and now they're up against Vegas, who, I mean, look, we've done this before where we're like, after game 1, man, this one team looks really good, when it was the whole Colorado and Vegas team, but I think it's different this time.
So I didn't watch the whole game, Parker. I know you did because you had to do a breakdown video. Did Montreal look dangerous and Fleury shut the door? Did they not even look dangerous?
Montreal looked good in the first 10 minutes or so, I would say. They looked really solid. And then Vegas scored that first goal, and it took the wind out of their sails a little bit. That Vegas crowd got into it a little bit more. And they just sort of put their foot on the gas. I think the second period was fairly even as well. The third period, though, it was over. Montreal just didn't have a lot of pushback.
Right. And as someone who didn't watch the game but looks at the box score, you notice that none of the big guns for Vegas scored, right? It was all these defensemen. And so it's interesting that maybe both teams, obviously Montreal only scored one, so both teams didn't have a lot of firepower from their big guns, and maybe that's kind of the series type of series we can expect with two really good goaltenders, right? And as things tighten up.
Yeah, I mean, you look at if you look at the goals, the first goal was Shea Theodore just absolute, like they clocked at 100.8 miles per hour, just an absolute rocket from the blue line that had 5 people screening in front. There was a seeing eye shot. It was an absolute perfect shot from Shea Theodore. The second goal, Shea Theodore winds up for a slap shot that looks like it's going to take Carey Price's head off, and then he literally hits the ice with his stick, doesn't touch the puck. Carey Price comes out to make the save, feeds it to Alec Martinez, who has a wide open net. So a really smart goal. Vegas's third goal was was a shot from the point that hit a Montreal player, hit another Montreal player, hit a stick and went in. And then the last goal was fine, I guess. But it was 4-1 at that point. So it was, the goaltending was good. Look, Carey Price did everything he could. He made one unreal save on Mark Stone on a 2-on-1. But Vegas was just the better team.
So what's your ultimate prediction for this series?
I'm gonna say Carey Price steals a game or two, because it's hard to bet against that. Like I see one game that Montreal wins, 2-1, 3-1, 3-0, something like that. I'm gonna say Vegas in 5 or 6. I'll go 5. Okay. Maybe Montreal wins like game 3 or something, and then this series is over middle of next week.
I'll take 6 then. Vegas in 6. So we agree on the Vegas. Okay.
All right. And the other series is from last night, the first game, or I guess yesterday at noon, I think it was the first game. New York Islanders, Tampa Bay Lightning. And again, we keep betting against the Islanders. And I went into this one thinking, I was like, man, I can't keep betting against the Islanders. They keep winning. Tampa in 6. And then they come out and they just use their same style and they just shut down Tampa Bay. And for some reason, no one can score on this team, right? The only goal coming from Braden Point on the power play with the net empty with 54 seconds to go. So at that point, that's, you can't really count that as like, oh, wow, they put on the pressure to get a goal, right? Like that's just going to happen sometimes. But yeah, the Islanders they just shut the door.
Yeah, before the season started, I did say Tampa in 6. I can't change it now just because they lost the first game, although that means they got to win 4 of the next 5, which is going to be pretty tough against a very stingy Islanders team. Yeah, just as we said, by the way, kudos for not calling them conference finals, because as we talked about, there are no conferences this year. There are 2 semifinals. So just as we said that Vegas Montreal is going to be low scoring, I actually think the same for Tampa, New York. It's going to be another defensive struggle. And New York was able to shut down the big guns for Tampa. I don't know if they'll be able to do that all series. But I did say Tampa in 6 before the series started, although that's going to be pretty tough.
I think what Tampa needs is they need to shell the Islanders in one game. Yeah. I think if Tampa Bay comes out tomorrow night and scores like 6 goals, then I think we're looking at a series where they have all the momentum. The Islanders maybe lose a little bit of faith in their system and they just and they roll them. But if the Islanders can come back in the next game, even if they lose, let's say they lose 1-0, the Lightning win 1-0. Well, if you're the Islanders, you're like, well, we're still doing everything right. We just got to score 1-2 goals, right? Yeah. So I think that's really what's going to come down to is Tampa Bay needs this game, needs the doors to sort of blow open a little bit. They need, they need to be able to, they can get some pucks through. They can get a few fluky goals even. Then I think that's what they need to really take over the series. But if it stays low scoring, I think the Islanders are just going to keep sort of suffocating them.
Sure. Just before you give your prediction, those of you that are still in the chat, why don't you type out your predictions for both series, Vegas, Montreal, and New York, Tampa, and games as well. So what are you saying, Parker, for this one?
My initial reaction before the series started, I was thinking Tampa in 6. I think I'm probably leaning Tampa in 7 right now, which, the odds probably aren't in my favor for that, with, them needing to win 4 out of the next 6. But I just think they're still such a good team, and it's nothing against the Islanders, just Tampa Bay is so good. You're talking best goalie in the league, some of the best players in the league. Victor Hedman, who had an off year, if he's back in form, I mean, he's one of the best defensemen in the NHL. I put out a post on my YouTube channel, and I said, what's your pick for the Stanley Cup Finals matchups? It's basically a way to gauge who thinks each team's going to win.
Can I guess?
Sure.
I bet you people said Vegas, Tampa.
Vegas, Tampa was number 2.
What?
The exact opposite was number 1. So Isles Habs was the number 1 predicted by my viewers. And I think this might be biased. I think I had a bit of an influx of Habs fans recently from my Scheifele video. So Isles Habs had 37%, Tampa Vegas 30%, Tampa Montreal 22%, Islanders Vegas 11%. So if you break that down, 48% of people picked the Islanders, 52% picked Tampa, and then 59% picked Montreal, which I think is that sort of bias coming in from my Scheifele video, and 41 took Vegas.
Wow, well, that's surprising to me, and it's opposite of what we said kind of collectively in our predictions. Is if both of us were one person, we have Tampa versus Vegas in the final.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, Montreal, New York would be, as we talked about, kind of the battle of the understated underdogs for sure.
Yeah, no, that would be. I mean, I'm hoping Vegas doesn't win. That's sort of on the team I'm on right now. Is I'm just anti-Vegas. I don't want a 4-year-old team to win the Stanley Cup. That's just It's not right to me. Just think of the sense of entitlement they would have in Vegas after something like that. Be like, oh wow, Canucks fans, eh? How's that 50 years been? Right? Like and
then imagine if Seattle gets some funny ideas and they do something funky too.
Yeah, Seattle's gonna have a harder time. I think GMs are gonna not outsmart themselves like they did. They did in the last set.
Absolutely. Wow, look, 57 minutes fly by. Should we do a few minutes in the chat box then for some questions?
Absolutely. If you guys have anything that you want us to talk about, any questions, any topics, anything like that, we've got 2.5, 3 minutes left to go. So we'll fit it. We always go a few minutes over, so we'll fit a couple in here.
Yes. Fangirl asked thoughts on the new additions to the Canucks Alumni Association that were announced on the weekend. I got to look that up. I don't even know.
I saw Bieksa was in there. Hamhuis was in there.
Okay.
A couple of others that I've never heard of.
Okay. Well, because I'm old and you're young. Okay.
Yeah, there's some really plain names that like here I'll read a couple.
Okay.
Burrows was one of them as well.
Okay.
But like I don't know who Kurt Ridley is. Is that a big one I'm missing?
No, it's not a big one. No.
Mark Curtin.
Yeah, actually, he's okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a bunch of people who played for the team. Okay. There's a guy like this. This is a made up name, right? Larry Goodenough.
Well, he's good enough to get an alumni association. So
I'm looking this. This is actually a hockey player. That is the lamest name I've ever heard. Larry Goodenough. He played, looks like about 100 games for the Canucks and had about 26 points, 25 points, 28 points. Good for Larry. It was good enough. Yeah, that's
well, he's better than Joseph Sucky too much or whatever. No, that doesn't sound good either.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Either way, yeah. So that was a fun one.
Okay, that's good. Well, there's some names in there that I recognize. That Hamhuis, Bieksa, and Burrows at least.
All right. Do you want to grab another one? I've been reading a lot Larry's name too much.
No, that's fine. Arsenal says, would you guys rather have a good defensive team like Vegas or New York, or a high-end skill team like Colorado for the future? Do you think one style is more effective than another?
I don't think one is more effective than the other. Look, I mean, if the Canucks were to bring in like a Barry Trotz, it would be one of those things where it's like, man, this is probably really good for the team, and it's going to be really not fun to watch, right?
Yep.
And it's one of those things you have to balance, right? Look, I'm all for doing everything you can to win the Stanley Cup. But would I go 1% better odds and then not really enjoy think of it this way. Would you rather watch Colorado or New York or the New York Islanders, try to win the Stanley Cup, right? You're taking Colorado every time. Such a more fun team. However, if one of them's going to work better, then, you go that way. That's your job. But I just want to see fun hockey as well.
Agreed. And I'm going to give a typical fence sitting answer, because what team do I want to watch? Colorado. What team's going to be more successful? I think a New York Islanders type of team, because you rarely hear of a Stanley Cup champion and you say that they completely blew the doors off the team, or they outscored the team, or they just went crazy. No, it's they shut down. This team shut down the other team. Boston 4-0 victory in Game 7. They shut down the Canucks, and we see that all the time.
And it's just the way the playoffs are, and a lot of it comes down to officiating in the playoffs, right? The fact that it's a much more clutchy and grabby sport in the playoffs, where your McDavids, McKinnons just can't be as effective as they could in the regular season. And you see that with Toronto, right? Even though they did add some of that grit, which is just a bunch of old people is grit, apparently. It's a different sport.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I don't care if we're offense or defensive. I just want to see us win more. Dexter says, do you guys think that Seattle should sign Dougie Hamilton?
I think anyone should sign Dougie Hamilton if they have the chance. He is so good. I think if the Canucks had the opportunity to sign Dougie Hamilton, he's one of the best defensemen out there. At the end of the day, I saw Top Down Hockey's model had him at 98th percentile for wins above replacement as a defenseman. So I mean, we're literally talking about a top 10 defenseman in the NHL at the end of the day, and adding him to any team would be a crazy good addition. And it's weird how much he's jumped around. That was also some big news that came out today, that the Hurricanes have given other teams permission to talk to him. Look, I mean, he's going to be 28 at the start of next year, which is sort of the start of a decline usually. But when a player's this good, if you're going to bet on anybody, you bet on a player that as good as Dougie Hamilton.
It's surprised he didn't work out that well in Calgary. I don't know what the issues were. Granted, I don't follow the Flames that much, so I don't know for sure. Yeah, not
enough museums, potentially.
Is that a thing with him?
Apparently he loves museums. I think that was something that came out from Calgary when he got traded to Carolina. And apparently, like, all the guys would want to go out to like the club one night, and he would be like, just go off on his own to some museum. That's just his thing. He's a museum guy.
Okay.
And I mean, we've got an art gallery, we've got Science World, we've got
aquarium.
We've got an aquarium. Yeah, we've got a big park with a lot of trees in it. We've got a wall that goes around the water. So,
all right, start putting the recruiting video together, Parker.
Yes, it's gonna be like the remember the Edmonton video on when they tried to get the bubble there, and it was everywhere but Edmonton was in that video. Yes. We'll just do the same thing.
Well, I guess it worked. They got it.
They did, and the players did not get to go to Banff or anything like that, but they were sold on it.
Oh, false marketing, false advertising. Yeah, unbelievable.
Don't do that.
Didn't we answer this last week from Seattle? Who do you think wins the Selkie? I remember us talking about that.
Yep, we did. And I said all of the default answers, and it's
right.
It's whoever
we think it might be Stone, even though Barkov is
choose.
Yeah. There you go. Okay, here's one more. Johnny Canuck, would you expose Myers for a chance to unload the contract and free up the cap space?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't think.
Do you think that does any? Yeah. Do you think that does anything for relationship, or you're not worried about that, Parker?
You already gave
if you're Myers, right?
You gave the guy, $30 million. Okay. I think he'll get over it. Look, I mean, you can go to him and you can say, look, we're going to expose you because we don't think they're going to take you, right? And I think that's what they did with Lucic. Where does Lucic play for Calgary now? I get that mixed up all the time still.
Yes.
But he's like, look, I'll let them expose me in the expansion draft because Seattle's not going to take me because my contract's too big, right? And I think it's sort of the same deal with Myers, right? If the Canucks wanted to go out and bring in another asset that would be protectable, let's say, just some random second line forward potentially,
Yep.
that you'd want to protect in the expansion draft. You get via trade, and now you have to expose someone else. Well, instead of exposing, a better player, you can go to Myers and say, look, hey, we want to bring this guy in to make our team better so we can compete for a Stanley Cup. To do that, we have to expose you to Seattle. We don't think they're going to take you because of your salary cap hit.
Right.
And that's not a slight to Tyler Myers. $6 million is a lot to live up to. Good on his agent for getting that contract for him.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think that's the smart move. I think there's a way to do it without hurting a relationship.
Yeah. And a way to wrap up this topic and go back to something. Yeah. Chris Gear also said with Securis and Price, Chris Gear being the assistant general manager, he did say that they're going to explore ways to leverage their expansion draft room. He kind of giggled saying it's kind of obvious who we're going to be protecting. So yeah, they can go after a Carolina, a Toronto, any team, Nashville, any team that's going to have trouble protecting all their guys. And you're right, maybe set up a move or two. Yeah, it would be a great problem to have if we had to expose Tyler Myers as opposed to Madison Bowie.
Yeah, thank goodness someone is thinking about that in the Canucks
Yes.
front office, because we've been preaching that. Been preaching that forever, saying, look, just manipulate other teams. You have this golden opportunity of the expansion draft where you're not going to lose anyone super valuable while all these other teams have players that they don't want to use. Capitalize on it. This is your chance.
Yes.
Amen. The fact they're actually thinking about it is great, and I think that's a good place to wrap up. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Of course, hit like, hit subscribe, leave a comment, do all that good stuff. If you missed any part of the show, you can rewind back to the start. If you want to listen to it in the morning, it'll be up on your favorite podcast platform. If you are listening on a podcast platform, hello, go check out the YouTube and hit subscribe over there as well. I had something else I want to say. I don't remember it.
Was
Clay?
it reminding them about the time change?
That is exactly what it was. Next week will not be at 10 p.m. It'll be at 7:30. I'm going to have the YouTube stream posted the day before, so you'll have a lot of time to be notified of it. It'll be at 7:30 p.m. instead of 10 p.m. So 2.5 hours early. It'll still go the full hour. And if you tune in late, it'll still be up on YouTube at 10 p.m. anyways, so you can watch it, the VOD there, and of course on all the podcast platforms that night as well. Anyways.
Yes, we want you guys to join us. We want you guys, because we'll have more hockey to talk about, maybe a contract signing, maybe a Sedin sighting. Who knows? We'll find stuff to talk about and come celebrate my last day of being 47 years old together.
Perfect. Anyways, that's it for us. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.